I am Jemalyn Griffin. I am an assistant professor of practice at the College of Journalism and Mass Communications. So my experience with social media actually spans before my time at the J School. I was the director of content and digital marketing at Harvard University, where I oversaw 4 different brand areas within Harvard's umbrella and managed the content and digital marketing teams. And so we really oversaw and project managed a lot of the different social media accounts. We managed up to 8 accounts at any given time. And so we were in charge from everything from research, planning, implementation, and evaluation of those accounts. And I've also taught social media, so I continue to teach social media within my current role here at the University of Nebraska, but I also teach social media management at Harvard University. So I use social media for a variety of things. I would say personally, I am not from Nebraska. I am from California, and I have family all over the world. And so for me, it helps connect my personal life to people that I care about, not just my friends, but my family. And so I use it on a personal level, but on a professional level, I would say it's something I'm very passionate about, particularly how social media impacts the world that we live in. And so that's something I really want to further engage my students in as social media takes a larger role, particularly within our industry of advertising and marketing. So I think social media inhibits democracy, just like any technology, because it has the power to be used for good or evil, right? We as humans have the power to utilize any tool that we want for good or bad. And because of the nature of work that we are in terms of public relations, where perception is reality, social media has that same power. And you can utilize content to create a reality that may not be accurate. And so in terms of society, there are specific examples and case studies and how that is the case, and how social media was actually utilized or weaponized rather for various political campaigns to ensure that certain candidates would earn favor among the masses. And so that is just something that is an unfortunate side effect of having billions of people on social media platforms and the power that those social media platforms can have in influencing the perception of certain brands, celebrities, politicians, etc. So I think social media enhances democracy because you can also use it for good. There are several examples of how various nations have actually utilized social media to start movements, whether that's here in the US with the Me Too movement. We're starting to see hashtags being utilized as a means to stand for something. And as Generation Z, which is a majority of my students, Generation Z is the most likely generation to care about a social cause and promote that on social media. And so you are already seeing a phenomenon happen on social media where younger generations are starting to utilize the platform for social good and to raise awareness internationally about some of the key issues that they care about. Sure, so social media is definitely having an impact both on the psychological implications of students, but also how we view the world in terms of framing how we think about certain topics or issues. So in terms of how social media impacts the social skills of the next generation, it definitely has psychological implications. The average 16-year-old now has more is taking more medication for mental health issues like depression and anxiety, more so than an average World War II veteran. And so you're seeing this, what's happening on social media is this phenomenon that we are being oversaturated with content, but younger generations don't necessarily have the proper tools or the proper experience in life to really understand what that means, right? When you are inundated with information, sometimes that can cause high levels of anxiety and therefore drive depression because you aren't sure how to react to certain things. And so it's really important for younger generations to be responsible and educate themselves on the implications that social media can have on you psychologically, so that you can make better informed decisions as you are intaking content, right? And so you can look at content on social media not as black and white, but a very gray area, and taking into consideration various factors of, for example, who is the source, what is the content saying, and doing your due diligence to make sure that you are doing research in other forms outside of social media. Sure, that's an awesome question. I'm actually teaching a special topics course next semester at UNL about social media and the digital and social landscape that it has, because the 2016 election was so critical in terms of how social media played a key role in that election. With Cambridge Analytica, you saw an example of how social media provided key data that's supposed to be private to us as consumers and only owned by Facebook, because that's who we granted access to that data, provide that data to a third-party vendor through Cambridge Analytica. And so Cambridge Analytica was then able to take that content and to take private data and serve content that would push us left or right in terms of the political candidates that were running at the time. And who they really focused on was the unknowns, the people who could swing left or right. Those were the people that they were targeting. So in huge states like Florida, you saw political upsets happen in the 2016 election due to this targeting of content to people who weren't sure where they were going to vote. And so it will be interesting to see how social media will continue to play a role politically, but also socially. I mentioned this in the class lecture, but the active shooters that were, in El Paso, they, or active shooter, I shouldn't put them in a whole category, but other active shooters acted upon a result of them sharing a manifesto on social media platforms like 8chan. And so what you're seeing is social media being utilized to cultivate further hatred, especially with more extremist groups, right? You're always going to have groups that don't agree with one another, and in fact that is what democracy is. But when it becomes dangerous is when you are only seeing one side of that coin, and it's driving further hate in that petri dish of people, right? If you're only listening to people who look and sound like you, then it becomes an echo chamber of things that you are hearing over and over again. And what are the ramifications of that? Is it going to drive more hate, or is it going to not, right? And what we're seeing is that it is driving more violent acts. And so what is the role of social media in that?